Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we had The Curse of Peladon. You remember that one?
Yes, rather interesting. A lot of action. Not a fantastic script, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah. With that one, we were following the Third Doctor and Jo Grant as they ended up on the planet of Peladon. And it was currently going through a little bit of turmoil, trying to join the Federation and stuff. And meanwhile, the Doctor and Jo had to pose as the representatives of Earth. All around, nice, good, fun. This time around, we're moving on to The Deadly Assassin with the Fourth Doctor.
Tom Baker.
Yeah, we are moving on into Season 14, Episode 3 this time around. It's another four-parter, and should be interesting. And kind of like last time, I don't know... I'm not sure who our companion will be for this one. Could be Sarah Jane, could not be Sarah Jane. I don't know. But I guess the only way is to find out. So we might as well just pop right into it.
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
The Time Lords faced the most dangerous crisis in their long history.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The Panopticon.
Time Lord frat party. So we actually get to see the Time Lords this episode.
Chancery Guards. What a welcome home.
So I guess it's just him.
Can I be of any further help, Castellan Spandrel?
1 minute, Engin.
Very Eastern European accent.
Yeah.
Malfeasance, Hilred.
Malfeasance?
The occupant of your Type 40 is a convicted criminal. Approach with caution.
Very good, Castellan.
He did steal the
Social
TARDIS.
status.
That's how he got it.
Now, Castellan, that's strangely enough as almost a Spanish word, Castellano, literally the man who runs the castle.
Banishment to Earth. Sol 3 in Buttersparrow. The sentence was subsequently remitted at the intercession of the CIA.
Celestial Intervention Agency. They get their fingers into everything. Is he mixed up with them?
There's nothing further on the file.
Oh, yes. They'd see to it that there wouldn't be. Can you get me his extract biog?
Yes, certainly.
So they lifted his exile from Earth, which goes all the way back to the end of the Second Doctor.
Well, your duties usually involve you with more plebeian classes, don't they, Castellan?
A Pydonian renegade, huh? I have to refer this to Chancellor Goth.
So he's mixed up with the lower ends of the Time Lords.
Is who will he name as his successor?
Oh no. It's Runcible. Runcible the Fatuous.
In a moment, I hope to talk to Cardinal
Bruno the Questionable.
leader of the Pydonian chapter.
Gotta admit, the production values are outstanding.
Yeah.
You can spare a moment, sir.
You had ample opportunity to ask me questions during your misspent years at the Academy. You failed to avail yourself of the opportunity then, and it is too late now. Good
Oh,
day.
I would love to say that to some of my students.
What a way to travel. Which way the Panopticon?
Oh good, he's got the scarf back.
One of the things that I always liked about Tom Baker is the sense of humor. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of these science fiction shows lack humor. So it's always nice to see them not just so deadly serious all the time.
Yeah.
Like certain he dies very quickly.
Okay.
No, that is some makeup.
900 years, eh?
I could have sworn I was here a second ago.
Here you are, sir.
Oh, thank you. Most kind. Yes.
You're not gold, are you?
Oh, what? This isn't my gun. That fella's given me the wrong gun.
What fella?
That's clever. Then get a different gown, so they're looking for the other guy. Because they don't know what he looks like. I was gonna say, how does that helmet hold all of his hair?
Is there something the matter?
No, just a twinge in the knee.
Well, if you will lead such a rackety life. You had a facelift.
Several so far.
Yes. Well, nice to meet you. I must get on.
Now, let me see some of these names here. I mean, some of the names look familiar, but...
Well. Well.
Fast moving. Sharp. Very sharp.
No companion this time. Now, actually, I think in continuity, I guess he would have just left Sarah Jane earlier. Because I think he leaves Sarah Jane behind and has to go do something about the Time Lord, so... Maybe this leads into that. I don't know, but yeah. Even though we saw the vision, and then we saw what led up to the actual assassination, it still doesn't clear up why he did it. It just somehow he was compelled to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We will have to see, definitely.
But yeah, again, for this kind of thing, the costumes are excellent. The set is good. Again, love the humor. Especially a little Runcible. Again, it reminds me of Monty Python, which would have been right about the same time. Python, I think, early 70s. But yeah, they're injecting some humor into it, which really does help.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is that since every Doctor is kind of a response to the last one, that's why, after Hartnell, you get Troughton, and he's a lot funnier. Then, because of Troughton, you get Pertwee, and because of Pertwee, now we have Tom Baker, and so he's different from the last one. Even though Pertwee still had his funny moments last time too. So, yeah, let's get into part 2.
All right. I will say this: having been an actor, having worn some strange costumes, it is very obvious that a headdress and a thing over the shoulders like that would really severely limit your movement.
No.
It's something you can do in television and movies. You would not want to wear that on stage because it would completely restrict what you were trying to do.
The Time Lords must not be seen to be leaderless and in disarray. The assassin must be tried and executed before the election.
So they... It's a very X-Men prison they got here.
Yeah.
You will confess, Doctor?
Tried and executed. Notice he's already guilty.
Yeah.
Very sensible.
I will say, if the President is a Time Lord, you could regenerate. Seems like something you should do.
You still think I did it? I think you're going to be executed for it. They are preparing the vaporization chamber now. You have about 3 hours to live, Doctor.
Well, that's monstrous. Vaporization without representation is against the Constitution.
You are an embarrassment.
Has the accused anything to say before sentence is pronounced?
Yes. Article 17.
Article 17?
I offer myself as a candidate for the presidency. That no candidate for office shall in any way be debarred or restrained from presenting his claim.
See that the accused gets no opportunity to leave the capital.
Yes, sir.
It's an interesting move he made.
See that symbol at the end of the corridor?
What about it?
You try and hit it. What? Go on, you try and hit it.
It's the kind of vandalism we're always running the Shibugans in for. Miles away.
Besides, so you see, I couldn't have shot the president if I tried.
Okay, so he was trying to save the President, but the sight was so bad he shot him.
I wait for him.
Very good, Castellan.
Oh,
It's not really my fault.
that is so subtly funny.
The technician would normally be responsible.
My technician
Where?
in the camera.
I've never seen anything like it. I have, I'm afraid. You have?
Yes. It's a technique the master picked up somewhere on his travels.
Who's the master?
And that's just a sort of greetings card.
Shut the thing up.
The Master's powers get weirder the more we see him.
He intercepted his forecast that the president was to be assassinated and beamed it into my mind.
Is that possible?
Yes, yes. He could do it.
Isn't this where we saw him the last time?
Yeah, kinda. Man, this machine is so good, it gave him his scarf back.
Probably because he's outdoors. That's like the ones at Six Flags over Texas.
It's a weird acid trip he's going on. Well,
Didn't we see Tom Baker in a World War I setting before, though? Because the guy with the horse with the gas mask.
kind
so,
of.
So makes you wonder if he's kind of reliving part of that.
Maybe it was kind of that way when we went to Skaro in Genesis of the Daleks, because that was because we saw the war between the Thals and the Khaleds back then. So it was sort of that same like rocky area and explosions and stuff. Man, a lot has happened to the Master since the last time we saw him, which in continuity would be in Terror of the Autons when he had flesh and everything. Now he's very gooey and looks like Skeletor. It's interesting. Now I will say, I don't know if you noticed when we were looking through the credits on part 1, but it did just flat out say The Master in there. And so when it showed up, you didn't say anything. I was just like, all right, we'll wait for the show to reveal it then. So, all right. All right, let's get on to part 3.
Also, some somewhat interesting costume choice here. He wears a modern-day overcoat and scarf, but his shirt and his pants are very much like early 19th century.
Yeah.
I am the creator here, Doctor. This is my world. There is no escape for you.
This did get really weird really fast.
The Doctor is never more dangerous than when the odds are against him.
So is he not actually in it, or are there two of him and we just didn't know that?
Because having a wire in your backpack. I mean, I understand the grenade and the C4, but having the wire was a little weird.
If you'd have had this nightmare, would have ended. So that's what he was up to.
Probably shouldn't leave evidence of what you did. But it is a different guy that the Master sent in.
Yeah. It's interesting, most of this episode has been outdoors.
Yeah.
On location. I was thinking the thing that he used to sip the water with that he had cleaned out. And he still has the bottle of poison. He just took a couple of thorns. Maybe he's going to use a blowgun or something to try to poison the guy.
Maybe.
Oh, look.
He's been in almost 4 minutes. How long can a living man exist in there?
No data available. His body's on the point of collapse now.
It's only been 4 minutes.
Shallow respiration for defense.
Get back! Get back!
Smooth. Oh, the gas. That's why. That's one way to decide a president.
Finished. You're finished.
Well, not quite as exciting as the trial by combat, but
Very interesting. Again, most of it outdoors.
yeah.
Now, I got to say, having lived in England, even if that was filmed in the middle of the summer, at the hottest point of the season, that was probably still very cold, sloshing around in that water.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where. I mean, is there anywhere in England that looks like that though?
Well, that's not the moors down there in the southwest part, down in the Cornwall area. But, yeah, you could find swamps like that. I mean, I don't recall anything like that. I was thinking that I saw some bamboo in there, so that didn't seem like anything that had been done.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure that they had found someplace relatively close
Yeah.
that they could have filmed that.
I mean, either that or the budget's even higher than we thought, and they went somewhere else.
I don't suspect they would have gone out of country to do that.
Maybe. Okay, part 4. Now I wonder, if you were being choked like that, could you potentially, if you hit the eyes, that's always something no one ever tries.
No.
If you go for the eyes, no matter how tough you are, if someone jabs you in your eye, you're gonna reel back.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know, he's got, his knee would be right about where the other guy's crotch is, so, I mean, that would also be effective.
That's true. Well, that, and there is the poison injury that he dealt.
Although he injected himself with some kind of antidote, I think. I mean, that was that whole thing.
Yeah, but he was still limping.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we should just watch and find out.
Let's find out.
Finished. You're finished.
It wasn't even anything special. He just kind of lost it.
Do you mind? This is a non-smoking compartment.
What? How do you feel, Doctor? Did you say Goth, the Chancellor?
Yes. The Master's leg man. He's the assassin, Spectre.
That's why he wanted a quick execution.
Yes.
So Goth wanted the president dead, just so he could be sure he would win an election. But how exactly does the Master factor into that?
Sorry, man.
Goth, what was... It's no use, Doctor.
No answer to a straight question. Typical politician.
It seems clear how it happened.
Chancellor Goth tracked him down and killed him, unfortunately perishing himself in the exchange of fire. Now that's much better. I can believe that.
You're making Goth into a hero?
If heroes don't exist, it is necessary to invent them. Good for public morale.
And the Doctor's power...
I can feel my hair curling. And that means either it's going to rain, or else I'm onto something.
Except that which existed within the sash of Rassilon.
Must be a black hole. Marvelous.
Now Rassilon found the Eye of Harmony, which balances all things, that they may neither flux nor wither.
But the sash is wasted on our dead friend, don't you think so? Bring it to me.
Don't do it, Engin.
A stupid remark, Doctor. Resistance is futile now.
Oh, dear.
It was still first if this is the 70s.
Yes. Plagiarism from Doctor Who to Star Trek.
Never actually seen the two of them fight.
Well, you'll just have to adjust the truth again, Cardinal. What about subsidence owing to a plague of mice?
As I believe I told you long ago, Doctor, you will never amount to anything in the galaxy while you retain your propensity for vulgar facetiousness.
You say that many times, sir.
Look, the master.
Where do you think they're heading?
Out into the universe. And you know, I have a feeling it isn't big enough for the two of them.
Okay.
I guess that was his TARDIS.
Grandfather clock. Very, very clever.
Well, okay. That was an interesting one.
All right, yes. And especially because of the humor. I mean, right from the very start. Made it much more palatable.
Yeah.
The story's quite tight. Again, I thought the fight outdoors, which they said, of course, only took like 4 or 5 minutes. I thought that was a little protracted.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was very good. Thoroughly enjoyable.
Now, it's interesting because I was saying in this that the Master was looking for a new body because he is. And, and we see in the Eighth Doctor's movie that he is finally captured, put on trial, and executed in they bring up the vaporization chamber that they were going to execute the Doctor in. That has to be what we saw at the beginning there. Of course, why he was tried on Skaro, I will never understand. But so it makes me wonder. It's like, how does he change after this? Like, what are the other appearances of the Master between now and, because before that, we had his first appearance in Terror of the Autons, where he just seemed like a normal human. And I think even that is supposed to be his final regeneration. So this is supposed to be that same body just completely
beef jerky.
Rotted away. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he gets a new body till then. But I guess that's the confusing thing about the Master, is that how does he keep going? Because after the Eighth Doctor's movie, when they finally got rid of him again, and they even got rid of the Eric Roberts body that he took, then he comes back in New Doctor Who, and they try to say, like, okay, well, how are you back this time? And he says, well, the Time Lords actually revived me purposefully to fight in the Time War, and then I left because I didn't want to. So it is tricky trying to figure out his timeline, and of course, we're doing all this out of order. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was definitely interesting to see another iteration of the Master, even though this is all supposed to be the same final life he's on. And
I'm assuming it was a different actor underneath all that.
Yes, it was. I think the reason that his appearance has changed so much, I believe the original actor actually died. Either after that first story we saw, or like after a few stories.
I seem to recall that in the comments.
Yeah. So they keep trying. I guess they keep trying to. They're covering up. It's like, oh, it's the same regeneration, and I guess that's the other thing too. Even still, it doesn't feel like they've fully established the regeneration, except for the Doctor, because obviously we're on the fourth one, and he kind of joked about that at the beginning. with the facelift joke. He's like, oh, well, I've had that a few times, actually. But yeah, like when the president gets shot and then he dies, and it's like, well, he is a Time Lord. He should be able to regenerate. Well, okay, I guess I actually just remembered this, that they do bring up the regenerations. I forgot. They mention this, especially with the Master, because he's run out of his regenerations. They've firmly established there's no way to have a 13th regeneration. You get 12, you get 13 lives overall, and that's it. So that's why the Master is doing all this, to use the Eye of Harmony to rejuvenate his body and then destroy Gallifrey all in one swoop.
Yeah. Now, the Chancellor, although he was retiring, would you not assume then that he was on his last life and that's why he wasn't going to regenerate? I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't really go into that. We don't really know how the presidency works or anything like that. I guess you would also wonder with Goth, he was dying at the end of that, but he wasn't regenerating. But I guess, they said there was a risk for the Doctor going into that Matrix where he would die, so we just have to assume that would bypass his regeneration.
Yes.
So yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, again, no glaring red herrings or anything.
Yeah.
It was very tight, very well written.
Yeah.
Was it Robert Holmes did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah. It was definitely interesting.
Action packed, and again, the humor. I love the humor.
Yeah.
Being a director of stage plays, even in the starkest of dramas, you can always find humor.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also interesting because we pretty much didn't have a companion.
Yeah.
The two guys, they sort of became the companions of the episode, but no Sarah Jane, no one. So that was interesting.
And I like the fact that they were both old farts.
Yeah.
Like me.
That was the interesting thing. Like, when something would happen, the Doctor would start like running upstairs and stuff. It's like, all right, it's going to take the other guys a minute to get up there. It's like, well, the Doctor can climb up 100 feet, but they can't. Yeah. So yeah. They were good. I did like them. Let's see. Going over the notes, and I actually wrote a lot of notes this time around. So he got a vision of the future for the assassination, and what it seemed like was that it was a vision of him killing the president, but what he was trying to do was stop Goth from killing the president. It just looked...
Yeah.
His sight was so bad he couldn't do anything. So that was interesting, and then the reveal that it was the Master that sent that vision basically to the Doctor to get him there, because honestly it was a very ambitious plan for the Master to do all this. He's going to use the Eye of Harmony to regenerate his body, destroy Gallifrey, and destroy the Doctor all in one go. It was interesting.
Tie up all the loose ends.
Yeah. I like the mention of the fact that this is a Type 40 TARDIS and it is obsolete, which is funny. And when they go through, there are 304 decommissioned Type 40 TARDISes, but there are 305 Type 40s that were ever made, which is interesting. So he has the last one. He has the last Type 40 TARDIS, and honestly, it's because he stole it. So that was funny. And we got a bit of his exile. So I don't know at what point this is. Like, we don't really know the story. We got a little bit last episode when they said, well, the Doctor hasn't fully defeated the Time Lords yet. So there's obviously been a lot of turmoil between the Doctor and the Time Lords for a while now. And they said, well, the last thing we have on record was that he was exiled to Earth, which is what happened to the second Doctor, and when they exiled him and forced him to regenerate into the third Doctor. So that's interesting that, like, we're still kind of going back to that. That's still, like, that has played such a major part to the show. And apparently it wasn't even the Time Lords that lifted the exile. It was the CIA. Was it Celestial Intelligence Agency?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that was funny, which I've never heard of that in anything Doctor Who, so it would be interesting to see them.
Well, here's a random little thought.
Yeah.
In the very first episode, Season 1, Episode 1, Hartnell has obviously been on Earth for quite some time.
Yes.
So it makes you wonder, was that part of his exile? Did he come there and just said, I'm going to... And then Ian and Barbara stumble onto it and they happen to fly off again. So I don't know.
Well...
But why was he on Earth in the first place?
That's true. Now, they did say in that third episode that he and Susan had gone to different places in different times before they met Ian and Barbara. So it does seem odd, with everything we know about the Doctor's character, that he sort of settled down for a little while, maybe a year, maybe a few months, but long enough for Susan to become a student at the high school, and Ian and Barbara to take note of her, which is interesting because with the full backstory we get on the TARDIS, it is that he specifically stole it because he wanted to see the universe. So somehow, for some reason, he stole the TARDIS, wanted to go see the universe, brought his granddaughter along with him, which the only family we've ever seen of his, which I've sort of joked about before. He stole the TARDIS and I guess he brought his granddaughter with him. It's like, did he just leave his wife? Is she just still at home, just waiting for him to come back, or I don't know. That's
one of the reasons he may have gone wandering is because Susan was the last of his family. Maybe his wife, maybe he was a widower. But again, the whole thing about being on Earth in the first place, did he own that junkyard where we first found him? If so, that would have taken some time to establish. Yeah. It's just so. It's just interesting that. We talk about him being exiled to Earth, and it makes you wonder if you go all the way back to the very beginning, that they're just, again, trying to work the story around what they originally had built because they didn't have a backstory for him.
That's true. Because back then it was just, like, they hinted at it a little bit, like, oh, well, because they said in the first episode, it's like, they have been away from their home planet for a long time. So even in episode 1, they do establish that the two of them are aliens, but that's it. They didn't plan that far ahead.
Yeah.
So now with all of the lore they have built for this show, they have to sort of backpedal and try to work in what they originally created. Yeah. Let's see. I wrote down the president, and he tried to save the president, which we talked about. We got a trial. Another trial, this time not by combat, but he could have been vaporized, which, like I said, we saw. I believe it's sort of the same thing that happened to the Master at the beginning of the 8th Doctor's movie, was that he was vaporized. Somehow, I guess he was still alive somehow through his, 9 million powers he has. I'm pretty sure every time we watch this, he gets new powers. Because, like in the 8th Doctor movie, he was able to just possess this guy. We established the hypnosis in his first appearance, which he used here. And then when he comes back in New Doctor Who, he actually... he's resurrected again because he keeps dying. So he gets resurrected again, and that gives him a new power. He has he can fire electricity and he can jump around, which is interesting. So, and he also had this sort of thing where sort of his face turned into that sort of Skeletor face he had there. So just every time they keep giving him a new power, which is interesting because you think you would just be able to have him just be like the Doctor and that's enough of a threat, because I even wrote down they appear to be the best Time Lords ever. With all this stuff that they were saying, all this, mathematical stuff that no one can do this. And it's like, well, the Master can, and he is as good as the Doctor when it comes to that stuff.
But this story couldn't have been done with William Hartnell or Troughton or Pertwee for that matter, because they were too old to have done most of what Tom Baker did. So not to say that they had this storyline around, but they had to. You couldn't have done this before Tom Baker, because Tom Baker's a very youthful and virile Doctor, whereas Hartnell rarely ever engaged in any kind of physical activity like that, because the actor was too old for it.
Right. And that's also interesting because technically this isn't even as young as the Doctors get, because the next two, Peter Davison and Colin Baker, they are both younger than Tom Baker is here.
But neither one of them is as physical. I mean, he's a big man. He's kind of burly.
He's incredibly tall.
And Davidson and Baker are both kind of smaller than that, and not specifically what you would think of as a physical type fighter.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. So, as we've been saying, we have the Return of the Master. An interesting portrayal. I will say this is kind of the first Classic Who episode where we probably could have used subtitles on this, because like some of their even the two guys, their accents were sort of a little thick. I could understand them most of the time, and then in that climax I caught like half of what the Master was saying.
That mask that he was wearing really, and especially when you couldn't see him, that's a problem that I have even now, is that if I'm not looking at somebody when they're talking to me, I sometimes lose words because I can't figure out the context of what they're saying.
Yeah.
But I thought it was also kind of interesting that although everybody else spoke with a British accent, the one guy had that kind of East European, and I couldn't tell if it was German or Hungarian or Romanian or Polish or whatever, but it was kind of interesting that he didn't speak like everybody else.
Yeah, that's true.
But the Cardinal, I love the Cardinal's accent. I mean, he's just so absolutely precise in everything that he did, which of course lends itself to the character that he was playing.
That's true. Yeah. Overall, it was an interesting portrayal of the Master, and especially because now we have him as sort of this. He's not even a guy anymore. He's just this odd creature, and he's got the cloak. He kind of looks like the Emperor, honestly. And if he had his lightning powers already, he would be the Emperor. But it's definitely, even though it's supposed to be the same body, the same regeneration as what we saw in Terror of the Autons, just like almost none of that original like characterization is there anymore.
Yeah.
But if for some reason he looks like this, I guess it makes sense that he kind of drops that more suave James Bond villain sort of character. Let's see. I
was just thinking, yes, there was at one point a line that I was going to say sounded very similar to a James Bond line. And I probably said this before in Goldfinger, when they're literally about to split Bond in half with a laser beam. And Bond says something to the effect of, "Do you expect me to talk?" And Goldfinger turns to him and says, "No, Mr. Bond. I expect you to die." And there was a line very similar to that somewhere in there where I expect you to die. I expect you not to survive this. So
yeah, that's true. We did have. I wrote down the trip, but going into the Matrix, interesting. I kind of wish that was a little shorter, and then we got a bit more with going into all the stuff about Rassilon and the Eye of Harmony and the Master and stuff like that, but it was interesting, like watching the Doctor go through this world that the Master had created. Master's not even in there, but go through this and being hunted by these various different things, and then just going down to you're just being hunted by Goth. That was interesting. It did, even though it was a dream world, it really like pushed his, I guess, survival instincts to the test. So that was definitely interesting. And then like creating the blow dart and stuff like that, even though Goth had an antidote in the dream. So yeah. So that was interesting. And then the reveal that was Goth, and it's like, oh, okay, it's our two candidates, technically.
Also, the biplane shooting at him and all that, that's, again, don't know if they deliberately did this, but there's a wonderful Alfred Hitchcock thriller, North by Northwest, where the lead character, Cary Grant, is chased by a crop duster that looks very similar to that. So, I again, don't know if that was an homage or not, but I thought it was interesting.
Maybe, yeah. Let's see. So I wrote down the regenerations that, the Master is out of regenerations. I was waiting for the moment when, Goth would come in, but it's the Master. He stole his body. But apparently I guess it's just not that easy. Which we did see in the movie. It took the Eye of Harmony in the TARDIS in order to even attempt to swap the Master and the Doctor. So that's interesting. And again, it makes me wonder how does he keep going all the way to the movie? Because this is season 14. We have 26 seasons overall, and then there's the bit of the gap, about a 10-year gap before you get to the movie. So how do they keep bringing him back? And also, since I guess the first time we saw the Master. The first time they introduced him, I believe, was in season 8. I think that's what Terror of the Autons was. It's interesting that it took so long to establish such a character like that. Took 8 seasons to do that. Whereas both the Daleks and the Cybermen were, I'm pretty sure, introduced in the Hartnell era. Obviously, we know the Daleks were, but I'm pretty sure Hartnell encounters the Cybermen at one point. So it's just interesting that we wait all this time, and then they introduce this character of the Master, and then it must be almost immediately that they have to drastically alter him because you lost the actor. And even though they do have a built-in way to get around that, because they had to do that for the Doctor. They had to build around. They've built an entire show around changing our lead actor every few years. But and I don't know. I don't remember if they established that he was already on his last regeneration. So I don't know. They could have gotten around that. They just didn't, which is interesting. Let's see. I wrote down Rassilon. So we got a bit of lore on Rassilon and how he'd sort of, I guess, create the Time Lords. Technically, he discovered the Eye of Harmony. And figured out how to use that for all of the Time Lords technology, which was interesting. And actually, it's also interesting because they actually bring back Rassilon in a modern Doctor Who episode, and they say, well, the Time Lords brought him back in the Time War because the Time War was just that bad that they brought back the Master, they brought back Rassilon. And because of it, Rassilon actually kind of corrupted the Time Lords into being these horrible people, and so that's why the Doctor sort of just ends the Time War. Like, no one won the Time War; the Doctor just ended it. So
now, I did like the fact that they talked about the early people, either on Gallifrey or whatever, were boring engineers and people like that. And it would take, an engineer or scientist, because if I recall correctly, the Eye of Harmony they have essentially somehow managed to harness the power of the black hole. Yeah. Which will then allow them to go through time and space and, relative dimensions.
Yeah, into the time vortex, which makes sense. Again, kind of going back to New Doctor Who, there is a point where the Doctor mentions, oh, black holes, those are easy. My people invented those, basically. So it makes sense. And then the sash was supposed to protect whoever wears it from, I guess, any harm. Which I guess at that moment when he said, oh, it protects them from any harm, we should have guessed that isn't the case anymore, because the last guy that wore it died, and that's the entire setup of the episode. But
well, maybe it doesn't protect them from all harm, it just protects them from the Eye of Harmony.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, that's just what I was thinking.
Yeah, and it is good to learn more about the Eye of Harmony, because the most we had was in the movie, and where it was basically, I guess, the center of the TARDIS, and they were trying to use that to swap the Doctor and the Master, and then of course they brought in the Doctor is half human, which I don't know how that works, but so. And I guess that's the thing, is that it's not just that, there's an Eye of Harmony in the TARDIS, it's that the TARDIS has access to the Eye of Harmony. Which, if that's the case, why doesn't the Master gain access in his TARDIS?
Maybe because it's a new TARDIS and doesn't have the features of the old, discontinued, obsolete TARDIS.
The Type 40s. So that could work. Every time I think back to the movie, I try to resolve like the 3 or 4 little plot holes it has in there. The Doctor being half human, or the Master being tried on Skaro. I still don't get that. Why the Dalek homeworld and not Gallifrey? Because Gallifrey was still around then. It's only in New Doctor Who that there just is no more Gallifrey or Time Lords or anything like that.
It's gotta, you can't answer every question. I mean, science fiction is there to ask more questions than it answers.
Yeah, so. And I guess that's true. There's just so many questions, especially a series like this, like we said, that was not completely planned out from the beginning. They just made a fun time travel show for the kids, and then Daleks and Gallifrey and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I wrote. It was good. Really enjoyed it. Sets, costumes, everything.
Music was good.
Yeah. All those ridiculous Time Lord costumes.
But again, I mean, we've seen some really ludicrous costumes.
Yeah.
In what we've seen so far. But I thought, again, very dignified. They looked, semi-religious and monarchical. I thought, I didn't see anybody in there that I thought just stood out like a sore thumb and went, oh, really, seriously, that's a very, except of course, ham-bone face himself.
But he's supposed to. Yeah. He was supposed to look like that.
So that was the only quibble that I had. All the rest of them, they were easily recognizable. You knew who the soldiers were and who the cardinal and those people were. So other than the actual Master's costume itself, again, well written, funny. It was cohesive. Again, leaves a couple of little plot holes, but that's what. If they didn't leave plot holes, he and I wouldn't be here.
That's true. We gotta talk. We generally talk for like 30 minutes, so we try to fill a quota. So, and yeah, the humor definitely, like, just all the tiny quips in there were nice. When they says like, oh well, once you're found guilty, we'll vaporize you, and he's like, vaporization without representation? That's not right. Just the tinier things like that.
Yeah. And they're not like modern day. A lot of these action films, everything, the humor is so labored. I mean, you can see it coming a mile away. Yeah. But vaporization without representation, that's very subtle. That's classic. That's good stuff. Good writing.
Yeah. So yeah, what do we have next week? If I could find where my mouse is. Next week we have Earthshock. We're going back to the 5th Doctor. For actually our final serial for a little while. So yeah, we're going back to the 5th Doctor, Earthshock, which many people say is one of his better ones. So, I mean...
this is Davidson?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I'm pretty sure it's not like Kinda, which I'm sure everyone was happy we were done harping on that, but now we're back, so we got to re-harp a little bit.
And re-apologize for just... everything that we missed, just right over our heads.
Maybe
or under our heads, whichever.
Maybe once we get back to that season, maybe we'll rewatch it just to see if it's.
I don't know
if it makes any more sense. I don't know. But yeah, we've got 4 parts. Let's see, we'll be in season 19, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
And we'll be up to the 80s. This will be the first one in the 80s because this one, the one we just watched, was 1977. So, So yeah, still before the Borg, so that resistance is futile line.
Yeah. And 77 would have been before the release of Star Wars. It's before the release of Indiana Jones. But notice how Gotham chasing him down had the fedora and the everything. So I mean, just again, you wonder how much Spielberg and Lucas and some of these other guys may have known about some of this stuff and just subconsciously said, we could do that.
Yeah, and honestly, like with the sets and the assassin gun, the rifle that the Doctor used, you could easily take that gun, put it on Star Wars, and it would work.
Yeah,
because it's sort of, I guess Star Wars has that same feel of like we threw everything together to make this sci-fi world. Which I will say, something like Star Trek. Star Trek, it always seems like everything was created just for this. We got everything purposely made for this. Whereas on Star Wars or now something like Doctor Who, it's like, well, we got a bin of just random assorted things. We painted them all to look similar, and we put them all together into this. So.
Well, you probably know that Gene Roddenberry, when he started Star Trek back in the 60s, he really did have an idea of literally everything that he wanted there.
That's true.
And rather than being set in the past, it was set in the future. So he had a vision of what he wanted to do, and of course the people who followed him did that. The thing that always struck me as odd about Star Wars is, you've got the capability of a gigantic starship going across the galaxy, and yet everybody's still dressed like they live in the Middle Ages. It's that combination of past and future that visually is great, but you look at that and go, seriously, what's the deal here? How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, and I guess too, and I don't want to say Star Trek had a bigger budget than Star Wars, because Star Wars is this movie, but at the same time, Star Trek may have had easier backing than Star Wars, because Star Wars, when he made the first movie, it was kind of just him, and he had to cobble everything together. He had to write the script. He directed the movie himself.
Yeah.
And then after that, he could do everything, but he still kept to that style.
Lucas, if I recall correctly, only had one really major film to his credit before Star Wars, when he did, I think it was American Graffiti. But yeah, Gene Roddenberry, he had been writing for TV from the 50s, and he was well known. And basically, you guys have probably all heard this, there had been a kind of an anthology series set in the Old West called Wagon Train. And when he took Star Trek to the networks, they're going, I don't know, it's and he goes, no, just think of it this way, it's Wagon Train to the Stars. And they went, oh, okay, if you can explain it in one sentence, then they'll back it, they'll put the money behind it. Yeah. And as it turned out, as cheesy as some of the production was on that original Star Trek series, the concept, though, was just absolutely brilliant. He says, take all the things that we know about today and figure out a way to metaphorically place them in the future and basically tell people, here's how we could solve that if we all work together. And again, that's why the concept, again, has lasted from 1966 right until 2019.
Yeah. Well, and I guess with Doctor Who, it almost seems like Doctor Who is sort of the midpoint between Star Trek and Star Wars. It's like everything that we sort of had to cobble together, but also still a lot of stuff that's very uniform. Which is why, when you really think back to it, it's like they came up with this idea that the TARDIS was going to change into anything to sort of blend into its surroundings. But then they just didn't have the budget to do that. And it's like, so it must have been that the police box was already made, and it's like, well, we're just gonna have to stick with that one then, and then they had to just roll with it.
Which brings up, one of the nagging questions from the very first season: what is the call box doing in the junkyard? I would understand the call box being out on the street because that's what it's for, but unless it was, something that had been discarded because it wasn't working. That's as you kind of go, okay, I get it, but then I don't get it. It's like, I don't know. Who cares? It's fun.
It's just where he parked, I guess. So,
everybody remember where we parked.
Yeah. And see, if you park a police box in a junkyard, that's your police box. So, I guess that must have been his mentality. But again, that goes back to what they were thinking in that first episode, which is like, they were thinking they need to make a nice time travel show. So, yeah, that is pretty much that. Next time we got Earthshock. So, yeah, with all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.